big. You hear me? He is a big God. So we're going to proclaim it. Hey, yeah, yeah, hey, my God is big, so strong and mighty, and his plan for me is victory, victory, victories. And my God, come on, you can sing that with us. It's big, so strong and mighty, and his plan for me is victory. Victory, victory, victory. Come on, let's sing that one more time. My God is big, so strong and mighty, and his plan for me is victory. Hey, there's nothing my God cannot do. How many believe that? There's nothing my God
All right. Welcome. Come on in.
nothing my God cannot
When you come on in, just let me know you're here. Like it and share it. Like it and share it. Like it and share it. Hey, Mitzi. Good afternoon. How are you? Can you hear me? Am I sounding good? I got fun. Come on in. Like it and share it. Like it and share it.
Victory, I got it. I thank God I got it. Oh, victory, I got it. I thank God I got it.
All right. How's the sound? How's the sound? Oh, I see Mama Gloria Hart, so she's on there. Oh, yeah.
I got it. I thank God I got it.
Okay, sounding good.
Victory,
I see Mitzi. I see Kathy Callahan. Good evening. That's right. Like and share. Like and share. Come on, like and share it.
I thank God I got the victory.
All right. I see. Y'all didn't know I could sing, did you? Kathy said I'm sounding good. You didn't know I could sing like that, did you, Kathy?
Victory is mine. Victory is mine. Say, victory today is mine. I told Satan, let me behind. Because victory today. I got it. I thank God I got it. We got the victory. Yeah. I thank God I got it.
All right. Come on. Come on. Come on. Come on.
Thank God hey, victory. I got it. Come on. Say joy is mine. Joy is mine. The joy of the Lord.
Yep. I guess I have to join the praise team now. Yep, you're right about that.
Is mine. That's why I told Satan, that the
Like it and share it. Like it and share it. Like it and share it. When you come on, just say good. Hey, Mother Lathan. Good afternoon. Good evening. How you doing? When you come on, just say good evening and let me know you're here. Let me know you're there.
if you got it deep down in your heart, yeah. Thank God I got it. We're proclaiming victory. I got it. I thank God. Say peace is mine. Peace is mine. That peace
Hey, Sister Pam. How you doing? How you doing? I see you.
is mine. It belongs to me. I'm chosen. Get behind. Oh, I got it. I've got it. I thank God I've got it. Hey, I got it. I thank God I've got it. I got peace, joy. I thank God I've got happiness and love is mine. I thank hey, say in the name of Jesus. That precious name.
All right, all right, all right. All right, all right. Okay, it looks like we're coming up now. Like it and share it. Sister Gloria, a prophetess, evangelist, great one in the heart, and said, nope, you better stick with what you're good at. That's singing. That's what I do. I mean, singing is what I do. So I guess I'll stick with that. Good evening, everyone. We're back. You know, I really toyed with actually canceling tonight. I really didn't. I think it's going to be injustice for us to do that. For us to get started on tonight. Amen. ICA, Pastor Barker, Jerry Barker. God bless you, because next week's a holiday. And next Monday is the holiday, so we know we won't be here next Monday, and I think we're going to do a disservice to people to get started on this and then not to actually come back to it for a week. But since I missed last week, I had to continue on. You know, I had to do tonight. I didn't want to miss 2 weeks in a row, but last week we had so much going. Now this week we've got a lot going too, because each day I'm going out to the church and just say a little prayer over the oil. We've got the oil of the Lord service coming on Sunday, and we're looking forward to that. Pastor Howell will be there speaking a powerful message, and the Lord has given us to distribute the oil. And I'll say it again, how we're going to distribute it: 1 vial per person. We're not sending oil to anyone. 1 vial per person, and all that we do not distribute, we're going to leave at the church. We're going to take it and lock it up. Because what happened was, last time this time we've done about 300 vials of oil, but we put another gallon of oil on the altar with that, so that we could actually make another 100 vials a little bit later. But what happened was, we did 400 vials the last time, and people were coming and getting 3 and 4 and vials and taking them to people like that. And that's fine. But what happened was, people started coming to church because people started using the oil, and they started testifying about how God was just doing things. I mean, supernaturally things were happening. And so what happened, people started coming by the church, and we did not have any oil at the church. And we should always have oil if God give us to do that. So we're going to do 1 vial per person. That's it. We're not sending in, you're not sending in one. If people are not in Chicago, they can send us an email and request a vial. And we've already been getting quite a few emails already where they request a vial at Faith Hope Charity Chicago at gmail.com. Faith Hope Charity Chicago at gmail.com, and say they're requesting a vial of oil and put their address in, and we will send them a vial if they're not in Chicago. But we're not going to be giving 2 and 3 vials of oil for people to go out, primarily because we end up not having the oil that we need when people come to the church. We just did not have any of that oil, and the last few people that have come, we just didn't have it. The only vial that we have left from when we did this the last time is the vial that we have at church, and I was really close to giving that away because one parent had a child that's going to college, and they really wanted that child to have this and utilize their faith to be covered by God when they were there, right? And they wanted a vial of the oil that we have on the altar, but I said we can't take anything off of that altar until September 1st. We can't do it. It's the process. It's what God has given us, right? And so I came real close to giving them that last vial a partial vial that we had. And some people we've had people that come by and knock on the door on Sundays. They'll come in and say, I've heard about the oil. I want the oil. I want the oil. And we just didn't have any. We just didn't have any. So this time we're not going to do that. We're going to give everyone that's in the church a vial of oil. And what we did it, and we've sealed each one of these, and they've been on the altar. Every service we prayed over them. Every time I've gone to the church, we prayed over them. I've spent one night laying on the altar with that that the oil is on the table, and I'm either on the floor or on the chair in front of it, just praying. and I'm contemplating doing another one, going and doing another night before we actually distribute that oil. Because let me tell you, we're headed into a time and an area that we have not been in, and we're headed into places that we're probably not familiar with because we've never been there before, right? And you're going to need every weapon in your arsenal to fight. And I'm not just talking about fight for promotion. I'm not just talking about fight for elevation. You're gonna have to fight for your life. This is where we are. If you ever understood what it means to be a soldier, and if you haven't understood what it means to be a soldier, you're getting ready to find out now. Okay, you're getting ready to find out now that I just didn't, about a month and a half ago, I did a post and I said I'm just uneasy. I've been getting up praying, and I said God's going to allow something to happen, or God's going to do something, and it's just going to be I don't know, shaking. I couldn't get my hand around it, and then when Hawaii, when the island caught fire, the Lord quickened that back to me. And see, God is doing stuff. About 3 weeks ago, Sister Sabrina was in our service, and I called her out, and I just said, God bless you, because you supported the church and you've done these things for the ministry, and God bless you. And she smiled, and she was back in town from Texas, and lo and behold, right after that, she got sick, deathly sick. She flatlined, and her daughter. She knew, if you go look at our service from Sunday, she gave her testimony. Her daughter knew enough and had God sense enough to call us. She called me and First Lady. We ran out there to the hospital and prayed with her. And she was at church yesterday testifying. She told, that's how I know about that she flatlined. And that's how I know. I know we went to the hospital, but that's how I know all these things happened. She testified, and we went out there. And God has given her a miracle and brought her back. Look, there are things that are happening that we can't that we don't understand. And then yesterday, as we was in the service and she testified, the Lord spoke to Sister Christine Fair, said, go over there and tell her that when I called her out a week before she got sick, God was preparing. That was all preparation and letting her getting her, because she was going to go through that. And God, and all these things are starting to work. We're starting to see things happen. We're starting to see things come to a fruition. And that's why if you can be in this service Sunday, God's going to give Pastor Howell. And all I know is that when the Lord laid this on my heart, he also laid Pastor Howell to be the one to deliver the message for that day. God's going to give him the word that we need, the Rhema word for the season that this oil is going to be needed. And it's all, and like I said, we're not going to give people 2 and 3 and let them take whatever. The people that are in the service are going to get a vial of oil. The people that are not in Chicago that request a vial, they can send an email to Faith Hope Charity Chicago @gmail.com. So request a vial of oil, put your address there, and on Tuesday we will mail those out. We've already got a substantial amount of people requesting, so we ordered the padded or the mailing envelopes that are padded, and so that we can get those out, because here we need to fight the enemy with everything that's in our arsenal. And it's not the oil, but it's the oil that we prayed that God would permeate, and that God's presence would be there, and that this would be the point of contact with your faith. With your faith, this would be the point of contact with your faith to that would bring God into whatever situation to do supernatural things. You've got to trust the process. That was my message Sunday. Trust the process, but you can't trust the process if you don't know the process and if you don't understand the process. And so we explain the process. And you got to trust the process. And so what happens is that oil is the point of contact with your faith, and that oil, and God will honor that. God will honor that. and he will do supernatural things for you. So we are just grateful that God has utilized us. It just so happened that come up, one thing I do like about social media and Facebook, because it came up a memory from 2 years ago that we did this 2 years ago. Who can believe it's been 2 years, right? Since the Lord gave us to initially to put the oil on the altar and pray over it and give it out. And we did not know why, but God did. And I'm telling you, the miracles that people have testified have been phenomenal. And I tell it all the time. My brother at the time was having problems with his heart. He was and I went down and he was seen so depressed and he was so down. And we sent him that oil, and God elevated him, lifted him, gave him health, gave him healing, and everything. And it just so happened one of his neighbors was having similar problems, but was in a lot worse shape. He was basically sitting, waiting to die. And my brother took him a vial of the oil, and God resurrected him. He gave him strength. He got him up, moving. That man, and he's a Caucasian man, right? And he said, I want to talk to whoever it is that prayed over this oil and sent it to you. So me and my wife took a flight to Arkansas. We sat down and we talked to him for a long time. But if you have the faith, see, if you read in Hebrews, in Hebrews, I think it's somewhere around the fourth chapter, it said that the word was preached to them just like it was to us. But the word preached to them did not profit them because it was not mixed with faith in them. So if you can't believe, I'm going to pull that up. I'm going to pull that up right quick. Because as we go through tonight, I'm going to pull that up right quick. I'm going to read that because I love this, because sometimes people that don't believe, that I don't believe, but I'll try. Well, no, that's not the way it works, right? That's not the way it works. Hebrews, the fourth chapter, the second verse, it says, "For unto us was the gospel preached, as well as unto them." I'm reading in the King James Version. It said, "But the word preached did not profit them, not being mixed with faith in them that heard it." See, if you can believe in your faith, when you get this oil and you just put a little bit on the finger, and there's a video at our website showing you how to apply. We're not asking you to pour the oil on you. You just take it. You just take your finger and put that finger on the top of the bottle like this. Put your finger on the top of the bottle like this. Just turn off. Just get a little bit on the finger. That's not even much. And then just take that and rub it until it absorbed into your hands, and then go forth in the day with faith, believe it. I guarantee you, we saw God approve contracts that had originally said it could not be approved. We saw God cancel surgeries that they were in the hospital waiting, getting ready to have the amputation or have the surgery. We saw God do that. We saw God give people promotions and raises, and because the word being mixed with faith allows God to do the impossible for you, right? And so this Sunday is going to be the oil of the Lord, and we're going to distribute that oil. And those that are not in Chicago that have sent, we're going to mail theirs out on Tuesday, okay? And so we're excited about that. Sunday at 10 a.m., 354 West 71st Street, the Faith, Hope, and Charity Ministries, known as the Faith Place in Chicago. Now, let's get to what we're going to talk about here tonight. And we're going to our book, Your Purpose is Your Superpower. And we're going to talk about predestination. Predestination. And I for a long time, it seemed that everybody that spoke about predestination, they spoke about predestination in terms that I think that I'll say were not real, right? They were not real. They were not realistic. They were not. When you consider predestination, people would often say that God has already determined whether you're going to go to heaven or whether you're going to go to hell. You are predestined to one of those places. No, 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 no. And that's the power of knowing God's plan and then understanding your purpose, because that nothing could be farther from the truth. Now, if you want to be considered, in the appendix of this book, I give a functional definition of predestination. Now, watch this. I'm going to read the first two paragraphs here in the appendix. It says, when presenting on a specific topic such as purpose, there are additional knowledge areas that must be clarified relative to the topic. There's some other things. There's some foundational knowledge that you need to know, right? For a topic such as purpose, predestination is such a knowledge area. There's so much confusion and misinformation about this subject, but to understand divine purpose, we must also understand predestination. Now, I want you to consider this. Right? God brought all of us here onto earth. And God's purpose and his plan in creating earth and putting man on earth was to expand his kingdom. As a matter of fact, Jesus told his disciples, he said, pray that God's kingdom be established on earth and his will be done, his kingdom be established on earth just like it is in heaven. So we know there that God's plan is to establish his kingdom on earth like it is in heaven. And he puts us here, right? He puts us here. Now, he puts us here to be his, to serve, to be his servants, to serve him. All right. That means we fit into his plan. We have a part into his plan. Now, when you consider that, then God then did not put anybody here. Listen to me now. God did not put anybody here to spend eternity in hell after we leave here. That's the only thing. He said he's not any should perish, but that all should come to repentance. So nobody's predestined to hell, right? Nobody. He said, as a matter of fact, he even told them, depart from me, you workers of iniquity. And he said, depart from me, you workers of iniquity, to hell, which was created for Satan and his angels. So God did not create hell for any of us. He did not. So to say that anybody is predestined or to go to hell is just an outright lie. It's non-biblical. There's no biblical support for it. There's no biblical proof for it. Now, if nobody is predestined to go to hell, that means everybody is predestined to go to heaven. Now watch this. Now I'm not saying everybody's going to heaven. This is where we get mixed up at. This is why we need to understand what predestined is. It's God is not willing that any should perish, but that all should have eternal life. So God's plan for all of us is that we would go to heaven. Right? Now, I'll continue on. The Oxford Language Dictionary defines the word predestined as to determine an outcome or course of events in advance by divine will of fate. Now, so predestination deals with the outcome, the end result, right? So if I go out here, I'm in Chicago, and if I go out to the expressway close to my house, I can go north, and there are predestined destinations north. If I get on there and point my car and go north, there are predestination endpoints. I could end up in Canada. I could end up in North. Those are predestined. Now, I cannot go out there and drive north and end up in Memphis, right? Because it's not one of the destinations that it's already established if I take that route. Now, if I go out and take the route south, Memphis is an established destination. So I could be predestined there. So when we say predestination, we're not saying, the Bible isn't saying that God has determined whether you're going to go to heaven or hell. When you say predestination, it says that God has a path. And the predetermined endpoint of that path is heaven. And then there's another path. And the predetermined endpoint, the predetermined endpoint for that other path is hell. And so you, on the highway, you get to choose, right? You get to choose. If you go towards God, you're putting yourself on a path that has a predestinated endpoint of heaven. If you put yourself on the other path, you're putting yourself on the path that has a predestinated endpoint of hell. So God is not giving us God has not made the decision for you. God has just has established predetermined endpoints for the destination. You get to choose the destination. You get to choose. That's why it means it's predestined. Sister Kathy says that God gives us free will. And that's how the free will works into this, right? God brings us all in here, and he brings us all in here with the desire that we would all take the predetermined path that leads back to him. But everybody don't take that, right? Everybody don't take that. But God brings us in here, and this is where we get into our purpose in this particular subject. When you were born, where you were born, when you were born, who you were born to, the environment you were born in, all of that stuff God had already arranged based upon him wanting you to take the path that goes to him. He wanted you to take the path of salvation. He wanted you to take the path of life. He wanted you to take the path that would make you a productive servant in his kingdom on earth when he establishes it, right? So he brings you in under the most optimal situations. Now, that brings us to where we were going to talk about in the workbook. On page 12 in the workbook, it states, and this is where we're going to have some input. You all get your workbooks and go to page 12. Go to page 12. This is critical to know, right? Because God brought you into this world, and everything about your existence or your interest into this world was optimal based upon God's will and God's desire that you would acknowledge him, serve him, worship him, and take the predestined path that leads to eternity with him. That everything about how you were brought in, you may have not thought that you had everything that you needed in your family. You may have thought that your family was dysfunctional. You may have thought that you could have used these things, and these things could have been done better, and these things could have done better. But no, God knew exactly what he was doing when you were birthed into this world, at the time that you were birthed into this world, at the place that you were birthed into this world. He knew the reason you have the education you have now is because God brought you into this world in this way. The reason you have made it to where you are now. And look, if you haven't made it to where you desire to be, that there are reasons for that too. And here's the thing that I learned to do at an early age, and that is look in the mirror and be true to myself. I could look in the mirror and be true to myself. It's easy to pat yourself on the back and say, well, I'm doing all that I can, and I'm doing, and you kind of build a sob story for yourself. But realistically looking, you ask yourself, Am I really doing that, right? Am I really doing this because God won't fail and God brought me in? And I talked about this here somewhat in my message yesterday when I talk about trusting the process, the trust in the process. When God brought us into this world, he had a process established for our life, right? And it's up to us to follow that process and to trust it. But look what it says here. Your purpose was defined by God before your birth. Now, here's what I want you to think about it. Get your workbooks out. Go to page 12, and this corresponds to a part of the chapter in the book, and I think it really a part of chapter 2 when I talk about purpose, right? So the question is, how were the conditions of your arrival by birth relative to your purpose? Now think about it. Think about it. In order for you to determine your purpose through the second method that we discuss in this book, and that is through life experiences, you've got to take an objective look at yourself, and go back from the beginning. I was born this year. What was the conditions of my family when I was born? Was my mother and father married? Did my mom have to take care of the children, the house, or whatever? What were the conditions? What was my family life like? What was my family's position in the community? What all this? You got to know all of these things. All these things. Were we middle class? Were we low class? Were we upper class? Whatever. All those things. You got to look at all those things because all of those things are factors in you being what God wants you to be. God doesn't do anything by mistake. He doesn't do anything by happenstance, right? And I can remember as kids growing up, I can remember being hungry. I can remember us, all the boys sleeping in one bed, all the girls sleeping in another bed. And there was a lot of us in our house, right? And I can remember the old raggedy house that we lived in and all those things. And many times during the time that I was living that, I hated it. I really did. I hated it. I hated that we were poor like that. I hated that we didn't have things that we saw other people have, right? But after I see where God brought me, I see that God put me in that position. He brought me into that position, into that family for the day today because of the things that I encountered at that point. And I think that the things that I encountered at that point, the things that I dealt with at that point, those are the things that God is using in me now to do what He needed me to do. I needed to hate being poor enough to trust God to get to give me something, substance, to give me some substance. I needed to, and as I look at the things in my life. I look at my family. I look at how we were and how we interacted with each other and how we got on. My wife says all the time, she says, she tell other people, if you're going to be in their family, you have to have thick skin. She said when she come down to when we go to Arkansas, and she said if you're going to be a part of that family, you got to have thick skin. Well, see, God brought me into the right place at the right time, and to the right family to be what He wanted me to be in His kingdom. In His kingdom, right? And so when I look at the conditions, that the environment that I was birthed into, I can see the clear connections of the state of my family, whether it was financially, whether it was socially, whether it's economically, educationally. I can see the connection of and the environment that God birthed me into, and how now looking back 60 years, I can look and look back and say, see, that was exactly what I needed to be where I am now. And I didn't like it when I was there. And I didn't like it when I was there. I'm telling you, I didn't like. But you know what it forced me to do? It forced me to read, to study, because I kept saying, I got to get out. I got to do this. I got to do this. I got to do this. And I ain't going to live like this. I ain't going to be like this. This ain't, and so it forced me to put my nose in the books. It forced me to study. It forced me to read. It forced me to learn things. It forced me, and those things that were that my environment there forced me to do are the things that God is utilizing now to reach people all over the world. All over the world. And I never knew it. I hated it when I was growing up. I dislike the environment, but that was the environment God placed me in, and I see now he did it for a reason. And this is why you got to take an objective look at yourself, and don't sugarcoat it. Don't sugarcoat it. Look at your situation. Look at your family life, where you brought in. The whole idea of this question, the first question on page 12 of the workbook, and you need the workbook. The whole idea of this question is that you understand that God brought you into this world to perform a function in his kingdom, right? He brought you into this world to perform a function in his kingdom. So he brought you into the world, and the environment was optimal to prepare you to perform that function. Now, you may not have liked it, and you may not have understood it, and you still may, but it was optimal to get you started on the path to performing that function, to fulfilling your duty, to fulfilling your purpose. It was optimal. It was optimal. And you can't, I understand. There's no way you could have told me that it was optimal, that it was good for me. Here it was. We were 14 of us, 15 of us total. Welfare children. We looked at things that other people had, we didn't have. But you know what? When I look back and I look at myself, my life, and I apply my life to it, and I look at where God has got me now, there's no way that I could be where I am now if I had not started right there. So God knew what he was doing. God knew what he was doing, right? And to me, that's the danger in some of these religions like humanism, where they talk about good without God. And I talk about this in the book. LaShawn Pace Rose wrote the song, "If I was in charge of my life, I would have worked things out differently. But I would have messed my life up, really." She said, I would have worked things out so much differently. She said, there would have been no hurt. There would have been no disappointments. Of those things, my life would have been scot-free. But she said, but then that just goes to show you how little I know. See, if I could have written my story, and if I could have put myself in the place to work, and even put myself in the environment, in the best place to do God's kingdom, I wouldn't have put myself there. I would have put myself in a Richie Rich environment. That's what I would have done, right? But that's not, God knew where he wanted me to be in 2023. So in 1963, he brought me into this world in this environment. And he did the same thing for you. So the answer, when you answer that question in your workbook, be objective. Think about as much about your childhood as you possibly can, the earliest you can, and think about the environment that can. Think about what you had and what was available to you and what was not available to you, right? Oh, I tell you, Pastor Stephanie said we may have a plan, but when our steps are ordered by God, everything works out for the good. And that's the crux of it. That's the crux of it, right? Everything works out for the good. And God is the only one that knows how to get us to that place, right? And so he brought us into the world, into that environment. He brought us to life within an optimal environment to fulfill our purpose, to do. And our purpose has to be a function within his plan. Right? That's what it means. Would work for those that are called according to his purpose. So our purpose is a function. It's a vocation within God's plan. And he brought us in. You know, you may not know. You may have came in, and I'll say your mama may be a prostitute, and your daddy may be a pimp, and God brought you into the world in that environment. But he brought you into the world to serve a function within his plan. So that may not be the optimal environment. It may not be the best. It was not the optimal. It's not the best, but God put you there because he knew the function and he knew the assignment that he had given you in the kingdom. And so you came into that environment. You know, when I first started pastoring, when we was on 80th and Ashland, there were little girls that lived around the block from us. And God had given us to reach out in the community. And my wife and I walked them. We would walk them to church, and then they would come to church and we would walk them home. And their mother was a drug addict, and men was all in and out of the house. Sometimes the little girls came to church, and one time the arm was in a sling. And I said, what happened? The police had raided the house and threw her up against the wall and brought her arm out of socket. And we would walk up into that house, and that mother would be just as high and out of it as, and people all over there. And we looking out for the girls. We looking out for these young girls. We wasn't concerned about us. We were looking out for these young girls. Why? Because God brought me into the world in an environment where I saw things like that. I said, well, everybody ain't bad like that. Everybody in that environment, God's got things, and God, even though those girls were brought into the world, into that environment, they had an assignment in God's kingdom. And God brought them into the world in that environment to prepare them for his assignment. Now watch this. Everybody could not deal with what those little girls dealt with. That means when they got grown, everybody could not function and do the assignment that those little girls could do. Those little girls could do. So that's why God brought them. That's why God brought them into the world in that environment, because he knew that he could optimize what they had at that time for what they're going to do in the future. And one of those little girls came by the church a little while ago, and I'm telling you, she's a young lady now, and she's grown up. And I'm telling you, I was reading. Let me finish this thought. She's grown up now and doing just fine. And you know what? She has functioned in an environment, and she has come out of an environment that other people would have died in. But God knew what he was doing. All things work together for the good of them that love the Lord. And God's purpose, since God has no desire that any of us be lost, that any of us go to hell, he brings us into this world with the desire that we function within his plan. Now watch this. I was reading this book, and I'm in the process of reading this book. And as I read this book, I have I thought about you, Pastor Stephanie, because as I read this book, I have renewed respect, renewed admonition for the Methodists, because this book is called "Making a Negro a Christian," and it's not really a book; it's really history, because it's all documented, right? And it talks about how from the very beginning, the Methodists in America, when they first started bringing slaves over, the Methodists was primarily the only organization that preached against it. They said, no, we are all God's people. We all come together under God's authority, and we all come together, and everybody's human. They are souls, just like they have souls. We have souls. We're all the same. The name of the book is Making the Negro a Christian, and it gives the historical perspective of from when and this is not somebody just writing fiction. They actually give the historical accounts of the slaves as they come in. This many slaves came in, and all the county, they go by the county records and all that stuff. But the Methodist was the primary organization that preached against it, and there's one Methodist minister in there. And this touched me. This touched me. He said, we are laboring and we're going to where these slaves lived. And he said, and I will tell you, these slaves are living and surviving, and the environment that they're in. He said, we could not last a day or two. That's what he said. He said we could not last a day or two, but there's something that God has put in them that has given them the strength and the fortitude that allowed them to do it. And see, you look at where we've come from. you look at where we come from, and you see that the environment that we've had to endure, that God, everybody could not have survived what we have survived, and this is what should make you understand how special you are in the eyesight of God. Everybody could not have made it through what you made it through. But God knew what your assignment was, and that's why you had to go through what you went through. Somebody else went through that. And so you look at some people and say, wow, they got it easy, right? And then if they could do that, and they're looking at you and saying, oh, you got it easy. You got it easy, right? But the whole idea of this first question, and it doesn't even look like I'm going to get to the second question. The whole idea of this first question is to have you to objectively take a look at your life. When I look back to where we come from, and people that grew up in Arkansas that know me know we were the epitome of poverty. Right? Our family. When I look, and I can't tell you truly that I enjoyed it. No, I hated it. I hated it. But God made me. God made me. He let me know, and basically from where I'm at now, he let me know that I was brought into that environment because that environment was the beginning of getting me to the place to where I would fulfill my assignment. And I would be what he wanted me to be. I used to look at other people and say, boy, I wish I had their life. But if I had their life, then I would not be what God, right where he wanted me to be right now. Right? So God brought me into the world, into the optimal environment for what he wanted me to do. And that's what this question, I want you to look. Look, listen, we were so poor, I didn't realize that we were poor. You know what? And you know what, Sister Pastor Stephanie? But y'all were doing a lot better than we were. Y'all were doing a lot better than we were. But God brought us into that environment. He brought us into that environment, right? I look at my family. I would see mothers and fathers, full families, and then I didn't even hardly know my daddy. I mean, I didn't hardly know my daddy. And then all of us had different daddies. And I was embarrassed, right? I was embarrassed. But you know what God did? into that environment, I was embarrassed and I disliked it. But what God did was he showed me how to be a loving husband to my wife, how to be a father to my children, how to be a structural family, because I did not like that. God was preparing me for my wife right then. Right then, he was preparing me for that. So how to be a husband, how to be a father, how to have family, and how to deal with things as a family. God was preparing me for that, and I didn't know it. I didn't like it. I was embarrassed by it, but God was doing it. So the whole idea: take some time. Take some time with that question. The first question on page 12 of this book, it says, your purpose was defined by God before your birth. How were the conditions of your arrival at birth? What were the conditions, or how were the conditions at your birth relative to your purpose? Think about it. Think about it. And what you want to do is you want to think about, write your conditions at church. My parents were together. My mom was a single mom. I had this many brothers and sisters. We didn't have this, or we had this, or we lived here, or we did these things. I didn't like this, and I didn't like that. Look at those things. Take an objective look. The only way that you're going to get to where you need to go is you got to move out all of the shades, all of the glasses, and you've got to take an objective look at where you started and how you started and the reality of what you started. And when I got to the point to where I could look at it and say, my mother, we had all the children, we all had different fathers, that tells you a lot about my family and the family structure right there, right? Right there. But that also tells you that God put me there for a reason. And you got to be true to yourself. You've got to be true to yourself. And I'm not going to get to the second question. See, I told you, and that's why I really hated to get started on this tonight. And then we won't be here next week because of we don't be here. But I want you to go to page 12 in the workbook. And I want you, on that first question, I want you to start jotting down the conditions as you know them, as you remember them around your birth. The things that you liked, the things that you didn't like, the things that were struggle, or your family struggle, how things were and where you were, whether you were born in New York or whether you were born in the cotton fields of the Mississippi Delta like I was, right? Whether you were born in the hospital, did you go to kindergarten? Now, we didn't have kindergarten when I first started school. We started at first grade, right? You did and write those things down. Anything about your early childhood and your early life that you can remember, and that you can write it down. You know what? Because if you can remember it, there's a reason it's etched into your memory, right? Because what you don't remember, you don't go forward acting or utilizing that to rationalize any of your actions, right? So if you can remember, so this first question, the first question on page 12 goes deep. How were the conditions at your birth relative to your purpose? Now, it also assumes that you've already determined what your purpose is, if you know what your purpose is. If you don't know what your purpose is, we're going to get to that later. But if you don't know already what your purpose is, then just write what the conditions were. What kind? What did you live in a raggedy house like me, or did you have a nice house? Did you have a lot of money, or whether you was on government aid? You start looking at the things, the government cheese and all those other things that you would get or that you could get. Were you in an integrated society, or was it segregated? Did you experience racism? Did you those things? Because you know why? Because God brought you into the world, into that environment for a reason. For a reason. And never discount, never overlook, never throw away the reason, because you'll never understand what you should be doing or why you should be doing it if you don't actually take that objective look back and come up with those answers, right? And so we won't be here next week. We won't be here next week, but we will start back when we get back week after next with that second question on page 12. What does predestination mean? And I want everybody to answer that question, because I'm going to have you to type your answers in, and we're going to talk about it. What does predestination mean to you, right? And then the third question on that page, is everyone predestined to fulfill their divine purpose and go to heaven? There's a question. What biblical scriptures should support your answer to those questions? So we're going to do these. Why don't you answer the second and the third question? We'll really answer all three questions on page 12, and we will come back and start on that when we come back after the holidays. Okay? Okay. So everybody, thank you all for joining here on tonight. Thank you for joining. This has been a great time. You know, I don't really like to miss, right? Because I like spending a little time on Monday nights. If you haven't gotten your book, Your Purpose is Your Superpower, and the workbook, and I'm gonna tell you, if you want to get the basis of that, Winning Spiritual Wars is really how this all got started. So thank you all for joining tonight. I'm gonna let our worship team kind of take us out from yesterday. The Lord really moved, gave us a great word yesterday on trusting the process. Okay? I look to see as many of you all in Chicago on Sunday as we distribute the oil on the Oil of the Lord Day on Sunday, the Oil of the Lord Day. Okay, God bless you all.